honestly, if you've watched gymnastics, like, you cannot comprehend how insane it is, the stuff that they do. Like, I fully believe that every single Olympic event, but specifically gymnastics, there should be like an ordinary person selected from the crowd, and then it'd be like, give your best attempt at doing the challenge that is in front of us, and then watch the professionals do it, and you'll see, like, man, they are superhuman good.
Now you know what you know. Do you wish that you could go back to your like 5-year-old self and say, do gymnastics?
I'm definitely not a build for gymnastics, but I think, like, if I have children, I'll certainly encourage them to be like, oh, do you want to go try gymnastics? Because even if you did it for like 5 years, like 5 to 10, the body awareness, strength, flexibility, and stuff that would just be ingrained into you from doing that. I really don't like clickbait. Don't like being over the top. I just want to be real, man.
Do you now feel the pressure though to be a sort of a content creator and to be producing more and more content online? Tom, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on, because you've been very influential on my own journey of improving my flexibility and sort of my fitness, particularly since the pandemic. So I was really excited when I reached out to you, and then we made something happen. But for the listeners that don't know who you are, could you tell us a bit about what you do and who you are?
Absolutely. My name's Tom, and I have been doing some sort of physical training for over a decade now. I decided that I enjoyed it so much, and usually to the displeasure of my friends, I would always try to be teaching them things and saying, even like back when we were kids, I would be like correcting my friend's dad when we were doing some sports or whatever. So it's been in my blood to teach anyway. And I spent a lot of time delving down the rabbit holes for myself. I would help friends out, and then my auntie said I should start making some YouTube videos about it. So I started sharing that, and people enjoyed it. And then 1 million people later, wow. I guess here we are. I was like, and as we were saying before this, it's about 9 years ago that I made my first YouTube video.
Yeah. So you've got around 1 million followers now on YouTube.
I have 1 million and I think 40,000, something like that.
Wow.
The 1 million happens in February 2024.
Incredible. Well, good work on that. Cheers. What do you know in total how many people have watched your videos online?
It's over 100 million views. I don't know how many.
Wow.
It's over 100 million.
Wow. Well, fair play to your aunt there for guiding you down that pathway and suggesting that you do it.
Yeah. She was. She's sadly has passed away now. Actually, she passed away just before COVID. But yeah, she's actually American, and she had a bit more of an awareness of this in terms of from a job perspective. I guess she had a supplement company, so that was like her. She understood that side of it, and I was just doing it because I enjoyed doing it. I've always enjoyed making videos as well. Like I used to make videos when I was a teenager on Call of Duty gaming. I used to edit videos, spend hours as a kid doing that. So it's always been like
Modern Warfare.
Exactly. Well, Modern Warfare 2 was actually when but yeah, I used to do all of the trick shotting stuff, and if you know the clans Optic Gaming and Dare, I think I had about 4,000 or 5,000 subscribers. I was edited, like contracted to edit for their videos. I used to. Like it wasn't an amateur thing either. I delved quite deep into editing videos in another life.
Is that where it started then for you? Because I think most people, they sort of leave school, they want to go to university, and then they go and get like a proper job in inverted commas. But did you find a real interest then in the gaming side, but then also the video editing? Because at this point, it wouldn't have been as popular as it is today.
No, I mean, YouTube was definitely big, but like, this is the thing, like 1 million subscribers now, it sounds, I guess, impressive, and is way further than I ever anticipated going. But like, what that was 10 years ago versus now is a completely different thing. And I do think there was more people doing it for the love of it rather than a business side of it as well then. But I guess I sort of always had a strong impression of what I wanted to do. But I've always been up for like trying stuff out, and I think it's super important that when I was doing this as a teenager, I was like, oh yeah, I could edit movies, or I could go down cinema, not Hollywood, but you know what I mean, that sort of avenue. That was like, that's a possibility. I enjoy doing this, I've always been creative and I enjoy creating videos. Trying to
So
think. Sorry,
that's great.
I was getting a bit off track, and I was like, what was the actual question that you asked? But yeah, no, basically I've been prepared to fail at lots of things and try lots of things out, and I guess I found kind of a weird niche between I love doing physical training sort of stuff, but I also like creating things. I did design as a degree, so video
Okay.
is a nice way to like let out some of that creative expression of how you present and how you communicate something.
But you said something there which was quite interesting about what you always knew what you wanted to do.
I always knew what I wanted to do, but what it also changed, So I guess I've always known that I wanted to do something creative. Initially, I wanted to be an architect. I decided that I wanted to do design because that was more broad. And then it was kind of when I was at university studying design that I started making these videos, and it was like, it was a nice expressive way that I could do that creative aspect in conjunction with my other hobbies. So I think Tim Ferriss had like always remember had a thing that was like you just combine 2 or 3 of your passions and you'll kind of have a novel idea for a business or whatever it is that eventually you do. So I guess that was like kind of the combination. I was super into fitness and training and stuff at the time. Always been somebody who's like a naturally a teacher or wanting to help people, and whatever I do, I usually go into it quite deeply. So yeah, it was like a nice combination of the two.
So then, did you start off being a personal trainer as opposed to doing stuff online?
Yes and no. So probably no is the answer. Like as a coach now, yes, and that was never the intention initially with YouTube videos. It was, again, this is more of like the innocent times of social media where I wasn't about creating a business. I was like just filming my own training and sharing like my own experience, my own learnings in a way that hopefully help people. That was like always just the intention. So a lot of my early videos are more like sort of documenting that sort of stuff. I would buy programs and then I would like film myself doing. So not my programs. I'd like buy other people's programs and film myself
Yeah.
doing and give like some feedback on it. So almost like I guess product reviews are huge in the tech space. It kind of is like a product review, but for fitness. And so that's what I started doing.
Interesting. How much money do you think you spent on guides and those sorts of things back in the day?
To be honest with you, like I say that probably not that much. These programs were like maybe 50 quid a time. I bought a few, but I would just read a lot, and I scoured the internet. So I the part of the reason, I guess, not that I didn't want to pay, but like I've always wanted to understand why things work the way they do. So training was no different. So like as much as I'd like to buy a program and follow along, I'd like to understand it myself and apply it myself. It's just how I am. So it's not
Yeah,
not
interesting.
necessarily anything against it. But I probably spent, I don't know, a couple $100 on programs. It wasn't loads of money.
You're now focusing more on sort of body weight exercises, aren't you? I'd say that having seen your videos online, it's more like calisthenics as opposed to sort of heavy resistance training in the gym.
Yeah, that was so. As long as I've done YouTube, that's always been the case. I started doing fitness stuff from an aesthetic standpoint. I mean, I was like a insecure, as everyone is at the age of sort of 17 or 18. You don't know who you are. Haven't had time to figure it out. I was doing some bodybuilding, some aesthetic stuff. This was like the Gymshark era, basically when Gymshark was born at the same time. Now, obviously, it's a huge thing, but back then that was like that sort of culture. And then I kind of just I wasn't particularly enamored by the whole like look how good I look. I was more interested in performance side of things. And it was actually I got ill and I was sort of had glandular fever, which hit and miss. Basically, you can end up with a bit of chronic fatigue. So I lost a few years worth of progress in the gym, and the doctor was like, "You shouldn't really go back to lifting weights. You should start easy and do bodyweight stuff." And then that was kind of where I got interested in that. At university, there was the national gymnastics team, so I was watching all of them do the. Honestly, if you've watched gymnastics, like you cannot comprehend how insane it is, the stuff that they do. Like I fully believe that every single Olympic event, but specifically gymnastics, there should be like a an ordinary person selected from the crowd, and then it'd be like, give your best attempt at doing the challenge that is in front of us, and then watch the professionals do it, and you'll see, like, man, they are superhuman good. But
Yeah,
yeah, in my naivety, I was watching them, and I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to learn how to do that. I'd better do that in a few years' time. And I guess 10 years later, I'm still nowhere near the level of even a pretty average 10-year-old gymnast, but it's fun to try. Keeps you busy.
yeah. I've used the rings in the gym before, and I can't even tell you how difficult that is to even just try to like pull yourself up. And then the things that those gymnasts are doing are on a completely different scale. The level of core strength that you require to be able to do anything is for me, it's impossible.
Yeah, it's just overall coordination. It's just nuts. Like when they're doing, I mean, when we say like gymnastics training in the context of the gym, it's like, okay, some rings, push-ups, and stuff like this. But this isn't even in the realm of gymnastics. This is what 5-year-olds are doing as conditioning. When you're at a professional level, they're doing all these crazy flips and stuff, and it's like the body awareness that you have to have, know where you are in space, know where the floor is, know how many turns you're doing, and then execute it at a level that's like immaculate. Is just, yeah, it's honestly by far one of the most impressive sports.
Yeah. Do you wish you would have done that? Now you know what you know. Do you wish that you could go back to your like 5-year-old self and say, do gymnastics?
Yeah, although I'm like 6'4" and I weigh 200 pounds, 90 kilos. I'm definitely not a build for gymnastics. But I think like if I have children, when I have children, I'll certainly encourage them to be like, oh, do you want to go try gymnastics? Because even if you did it for like 5 years, like 5 to 10, the body awareness, strength, flexibility, and stuff that would just be ingrained into you from doing that, your ability in sports will be dramatically improved.
Mm.
You know, countless. I think you could take any athlete and put them in gymnastics, and they would suck. But you could take a gymnast and put them into many, many different sort of strength-based, coordination-based, explosive sort of sports. They would do quite well.
Yeah, interesting as well. And also, I would say more longevity because I've found that since trying to do more functional fitness, I've had less injuries in the gym, for example.
Sure. I mean, I would say that the gym in general is an extremely safe activity. Like if you look at injury rates per 1,000 hours,
Mm.
resistance training is like the lowest. Like it's nothing. Rugby is probably one of the worst, but yeah, obviously we all have injuries here and there, but I would say yeah, it's the best protection is to do some form of strength training. Strength is never a weakness. But I would say potentially, I don't know, it depends what you define as functional fitness. Could be reduction in injuries. I don't necessarily ascribe to that. I wouldn't claim one way or the other.
Okay.
Injuries are often random. There is a genetic component to how are you going to be predisposed to injuries. Sometimes they're freak accidents, and sometimes it's like, okay, you've got a super busy week at work. Maybe you've just had a kid, like you're not getting enough sleep, and you do the exact same stuff as you've been doing normally, and just something happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, so injuries are not always predictable or preventable. But
And definitely random, as you say.
yeah,
To take us back to the start, then, so you're on that journey. You're creating content online. You started off by doing some reviews of other people's guides.
yeah,
When did you first start focusing on creating your own material online and sort of your own fitness journey?
it was always kind of part of it, to be honest with you. Like I was just sharing what I learned, and ultimately, like any tutorial fitness content, whatever it is like it is a summation of the stuff that I've learned. Um, so it's always been part. Actually, I think initially I shared a lot of recipes. I say I was into nutrition. I still care a lot about nutrition, but um, yeah, I just it's something I enjoyed doing. I think as well, probably at that stage, I thought I knew more than I do or did.
Yeah, interesting.
So there was less judgment involved, and I was just sticking out there. I think as well, like social media was just a less complicated time. So I honestly just wanted to help people. I just wanted to share the things that I was doing, and yeah, that's all I did.
Was there the intention to begin with that this might be able to make some money? And did you sort of like pursue that, or did that come later at the more sort of consistent you were? That then came.
No, I didn't make a penny for probably the first 2 years of doing it. I think the first 2 years I was just making videos. It was like I would get consistently good feedback. but again, it was just sharing passion and trying to be helpful and provide value, which is like a thing that I guess everyone talks about these days. It's like provide value, which is ultimately the fundamental of it. And it wasn't until kind of my final year of university, and it was like, oh, you could get a job. And I think at that point I had maybe like, I want to say I had about 20,000 subscribers, but it might have been a little bit less. And I was making tutorials and I was doing vlog stuff, sharing my own training, and so I did. But and I did have it out there that I would do some online coaching for people, which it was just more just like, I'd write a program for somebody. So it was very basic, and I wasn't charging very much money for it. But it was only when needs must, or I guess at that point I was just a kid.
Yeah.
So,
So you leave university, and then you're actually confronted with the idea of going and getting a full-time job, or can I pursue this and make some money out of this?
Yeah, I guess when I started doing YouTube, I was never intending it for it to be a job. I just did it for fun. It was something that I was doing. And during those 2 years, I finished university. It was actually when I was doing a placement, and we got to the end of the placement, and the guy who was mentoring me or whatever, he was like, yeah, usually we'd offer you a job here as a graduate, but I know that you're not going to end up doing this, so I'm not going to bother. It was essentially like, he was like, well, I would offer you the job, but I know your answer is going to be no. And I was like, well, I kind of would like the offer regardless. But yeah, it was kind of at that point that I was like, yeah, he's probably right. Like, I didn't really realize it then, but it like, I like doing my own thing and following my passion. So yeah, as I said, when I graduated, I think an average salary in the UK for a graduate then was about 24 grand, so a couple of grand a month. And I was like, if I can within 6 months get to a point in which I'm earning that, then it's a viable option, and I'll continue and see where it goes. So that's really where I started. Probably the best piece of advice that I got actually was from a mentor, Emmett Lewis, who was like, if you're going to make this an income, then you need to make sure you have recurring revenue. Like, as a PT as well, that's absolutely essential. You have clients and they are on direct debits. Like, it's just, and I don't feel bad about that. That's like, it makes it life easier for the person paying. They don't have to worry about it. And it makes it easier for you because you get a bit more of a predictable income. So ultimately, YouTube ends up becoming a bit of an it's an advertising platform, essentially. What it was. I still continued, like, the ethos, the focus was still the same. I was just trying to, I never really push. I still now I don't really push anything on YouTube. It's always there in the description, but the focus is always like the videos should be as much as possible advertisement free from my off. Like, I do take the odd spot. I take a sponsorship from Squarespace and things like that each month, but I've always been very much anti-ads
as well recently.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably been in the past year, and I felt weird about it initially, but I feel fine about it now. I don't think it really detracts from the content, and that's more of like a personal thing. That's not. I have nothing against making money or advertising. But for me, like, I've done advertisements in the past, and it's always just left me feeling with like a weird feeling in my stomach. I don't enjoy doing it. So then there's other ways that I can generate revenue. I don't need to rely on that.
Yeah, that's interesting. And one thing that you said there about the advice that you received, I received some advice at the weekend. I called somebody that is a relatively successful podcaster in the UK,
Sure.
and we had a really good chat. And he said about growing your personal brand, getting yourself out there online, because it will be free marketing, but fundamentally it will drive people to you. And he was like, my advice to you would be to go and like buy your name as URL, and then start to sort of build outside interests around it, because everything that you're putting out is only going to like, personal brand is the most important thing here. It's going to drive people towards you, and it's going to be a free marketing tool where people can find you.
Sure, absolutely. That was always the case, basically. It was never really super intentional. Like, I was obviously developed over the years, but I feel like if you focus on doing good stuff and you have a good service or product or whatever it is to offer, like, you don't need to push things. If you're providing value, people will just be like, okay, well, if I'm getting this for free, like, and another thing Emmett gave me as advice, the direct debit thing is more like you're learning how to be a basic PT. But he was always super adamant on just give the stuff away for free. Like, give your best stuff away for free. What's the worst that happens? Somebody tries it and they get benefit from it, and it's like, great. What's their reaction going to be? Is something like, maybe I should. Some people are just going to take it and go with it and run. Great, you've given some good. And the people who are interested in paying will be like, okay, well, what other stuff does he help? And set off services does he offer? What other things can he help me with?
Yeah, and that's interesting as well, because whenever I've spoken to like colleagues or friends who are complaining about, oh, my back's aching, my shoulder's aching, I've actually referred them onto YouTube, where I've sort of gone down that journey myself, and
Uh-huh.
then referring them onto free content, and yours included. And ultimately what that's doing is it's just free marketing, because you're providing something for free, and then that word of mouth is then spreading, and then the sort of the velocity of that happening is so much higher. It's reaching more and more people.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this like isn't super complicated, and most people, you only need, at the end of the day, most businesses probably 80% of your revenue will come from 20% of your customers. I think it's that standard like Pareto principle. Um, and you only need some people to value you enough to pay for things, and they want that extra level of whatever it is that you sell, and then that enables you to provide great value content for lots of people.
Yeah.
Kind of like taxes as well. Like you know, a small portion of people pay the most amount of tax, but it means that we have services for everyone in a society. So it's like the same thing on a business level.
Do you now feel the pressure though to be a sort of a content creator and to be producing more and more content online?
No, if anything, I've kind of gone the opposite direction. So my personal take on it is this is from a perspective of somebody who's been making videos for 9 years. When you understand YouTube, you understand that it is a search engine, second biggest search engine after Google, and ultimately, what matters is you're trying to best match whatever query somebody has with like useful video content at the end of the day. There is like, entertainment's its own separate thing. I deal with like helping people and answering questions. I'm boring, so I stick to the things that can be useful. So I didn't really think about this at the time, but in reality, the main thing is, if you're going to make a video about anything, it should be the best video that is on the internet. We want evergreen content. You want something like most of my views each month will come from the most popular videos, which will be videos that have been done 4 or 5 years ago. And that's how YouTube works. If they have something that answers somebody's question really, really well, they'll just keep providing that to people who ask. So
yeah, that's because that's getting more likes, that's getting more views, etc., and that's filling into the algorithm of that.
Yeah, exactly. So there is an element of like, you need to create a lot, sort of, but once you have quite a lot out there, I would say, Mr. Beast, whether you like him or don't like him, he's clearly super talented, and his whole thing was like, I'd rather have one video that gets 1 million views than 10 videos that get 100,000 views, and it's 100% true. Like, if I'm gonna make a video on hamstring flexibility, it needs to be the best video on the internet for hamstring flexibility. Period. That's how I approach videos now.
Yeah. Have you had any videos that you thought that were brilliant in your opinion, but have not done very well?
Yes, plenty. I actually had one fairly recently that literally it got about 20,000 views, and I was like, "This was a really fucking good video. Put a lot of effort into writing it. Really liked the message. Really liked the style. Everything was really good, but it just didn't. I don't know. And it's hard because with YouTube, it's not the video is most of it, but you need to match the thumbnail. You need to match the title. You need to make sure you meet people's expectations early on. There's so much to making a video that does well. It's not just about having a good video anymore. And I don't think there is the patience anymore. Like, whereas previously you could make a good video, somebody might be like, wait a few minutes and see what happens. But now it's like, if you don't catch people and kind of give them what they expect from the thumbnail within the first sort of 30 seconds, then they might not watch it. And yeah, if you don't, I really don't like clickbait. Don't like being over the top. I just want to be real, man. But yeah, unfortunately, that is kind of where things are pushing.
do you find, is that a frustration for you then?
It's annoying because sometimes you can make a really good video, and if you just don't quite get the sentiment in the title or the thumbnail quite correct, it will just, the video won't be appreciated or won't get the push that it maybe I'm wrong. But yeah, it's almost like you could spend equal amount of time really nailing thumbnails and titles to as much as the video.
Yeah, but it sounds like what you're trying to do is create good content, useful content that adds value to people. However, there will be a number of people out there who are not trying to do that, but what they're trying to do is just get impressions. They're trying to get eyes onto it, and they'll be, spending a lot of their investment will be on the thumbnail and maybe the first 30 seconds to get people involved. Whereas for you, you're looking at it from the, is this going to provide value? That's my number one philosophy.
Yeah, I also think that like you're playing a short-term game if you're just trying to game people into clicking on your video. It's like, you're just going to disappoint people. I'd rather under-promise and over-deliver than over-promise and under-deliver.
Definitely, I agree with that message as well, because and again, the same with the podcast here. I'm trying to provide good content that I think will be valuable to people, to inspire people, and it isn't something that I want to be a flash in the pan. I don't want to get celebrities on, for example, who have got, I'm going to use I don't want to get sued, but the Diary of a CEO has gone down this route now, where it's gone a lot more clickbaity, and they're getting on these names that have got controversial opinions. That's not what I'm trying to achieve with this. I want this to be impactful to people and hopefully inspirational.
Yeah, I don't think people are interested. Like the trouble is there's so many people out there that are making stuff, and it's like if you try to follow the trend of clickbaity things and giving, like, there's nothing individual about it. There's nothing interesting about it. It's just the same as everyone else.
Yeah, and also what helps you in your instance is that you don't necessarily rely on this for the income. You have other income sources as well. Whereas a lot of people now will be creating a YouTube channel because they want to monetize it as quickly as possible.
Sure. Yeah,
and
I've never had any. I mean, I've been fortunate in the sense that like I made videos. I was at university. I wasn't, I was lucky in that degree. But I made 2 years of videos about making anything, and it was when I did have to make money, I did it in a way that wasn't. The focus. I didn't ever change my approach to YouTube. YouTube was always provide the best free content that I can. If people are interested, I'm here. You can. What was Alex Formosa made a really, really good video fairly recently, and you don't pay. Yeah, you shouldn't pay for the information. You pay for the application. It's something along those lines, and that's essentially what I've always thought. That's what I've always gone for. So it's like, information should be free at the point of use. Should be free for everyone. That's what the internet's here for. That's what, like, the biggest revolution that it provided to people. Everything is out there free. You don't need to go to the university. You could learn literally anything for free online. It's the application that you pay for.
Yeah. Would you, going back now, would you recommend going to university as opposed to doing something else, like sort of not indebting yourself and then starting something?
Well, no, but here we are. It's hard to say because I went to Loughborough, which is a big sports uni in the UK, so I had a massive influence in terms of what I do now from there. The exposure to like elite level athletes and some of the conversations and people I met. Like, it would be wrong for me to say that I, didn't get something out of uni. I learned the Adobe suite, how to edit, how to use Photoshop, Illustrator, all of that sort of stuff. CAD, that was all at university. So it's not that it didn't help me out. I actually did user experience design, which is around like website and app design, and I designed my own app. So it all feeds in together eventually.
Yeah.
But I think like if I was to go back now, I would be hesitant. But if you're going to do that, you have to be quite driven and know what you want. So as I said, like, the information is out there, but you need to kind of search it out and realize how to apply it and why you need certain bits of information. Whereas, if I was starting out as an 18-year-old kid, would I have that? I don't know.
Yeah, and also we're encouraged by sort of external factors now to go to university because there are a number of jobs that will require a degree and even in some cases now a master's to be able to do the job. So
yeah, I always joked with my friends who did engineering, and it was like, if you weren't doing a master's, like, what's the point of doing your engineering degree? Because that was like pretty much everyone who did engineering did a master's. I think we're a bit of a tipping point. So like, if you do get a degree now, it's not really a differentiator. Perhaps if you go to a prestigious university, maybe it's a differentiator. But I think ultimately you want to have, as a business, you want to have the best employee you can have. And I think more and more people are less interested in those things and more interested in what you do, which is when you say about like your personal brand. If you're putting out stuff that shows how competent you are online, and you're like, okay, maybe I haven't got a master's in XYZ, but look at all the shit that I've done in real life.
Yeah.
I think that matters more.
A good friend of mine actually got his job working for a big asset manager in the US by producing content on Twitter. And he was just writing, contributing, building up a following. And then eventually he got noticed by the founder of the business. And this business is huge. And the founder of the business was also very present on Twitter, and then reached out to him and said, look, do you want to grab a coffee? I love what you do. Ended up working for him for like 3 or 4 years.
Amazing.
And you know, that was all because of the stuff that he gave away, as you say, for free online.
Yeah, I think the internet's massively reduced those barriers, which is a blessing for sure.
Yeah, you there are going to be a number of people who are out there now who are looking at YouTube as a way to make money. What would be your advice to them? Like, is it quite as easy as people say? Like you said, it took me two years and I didn't make a single penny from YouTube. It's obviously a tough nut to crack, and there's a lot more competition now as well. What would your advice to somebody be who's starting down that journey and thinks that it's a way that they can sort of have flexibility, work-life balance, and a good income?
I would say that if your goal is to make money from solely YouTube, then a couple of things you need to understand is that you're taking slices from a pie that is maybe growing a little bit, but not growing a lot. So obviously YouTube makes money from advertising. I think actually YouTube might lose money as a business, but don't quote me on that. But essentially they split stuff 50-50. It's not quite 50-50, but about 50-50 with creators. There is only so many ad dollars to go about. And when you make videos, whether ads get placed on it or not, depend on a lot of things. So making money solely from YouTube, you need to be getting millions of views, not from shorts, but from long format videos to make a reasonable income from just YouTube. So just bear that in mind if that is your goal.
And the long form content, is that because
I say long form content, I just mean not shorts.
Not shorts, but it has more opportunities to put more adverts into that, I'm guessing.
I just don't think that YouTube, or to be honest, even like you look at TikTok, how much you earn from views on TikTok. So I don't think that big tech companies have found a way to monetize, certainly in a split with creators in the same way that long form content has.
Yeah, definitely. And
it's just the nature of it. Like when you watch a 10-minute video, there's going to be pre-roll ads, there might be some mid-roll ads. You know, the way they can serve up and then divide that sort of value that is generated from advertisement is much more clear cut with long form, whereas short form is like, okay, scroll 5 seconds. It's like, where do you place ads in that? Whose ad does that belong to? I think, you know, what value does that ad bring in terms of what's the quality of the impression? There's so many things that go into. Anyway, all I'm saying is from a creative perspective, you make fuck all money from shorts. You can get millions and millions of views and you'll make a fraction of what you'd make if you made long form videos. So that's why you see, like, over the years, people from Vine, TikTok, whatever, have gone to YouTube, because YouTube is a well-established, sustainable platform for creators to have that partnership and monetize content.
Yeah, that's interesting, and I think you're right that people's attention spans now are just so short that where do you find the sort of the space to put in an ad that people are going to be engaged with? Whereas longer form content, I'm definitely somebody now who watches a lot more sort of content, informational content, mostly on YouTube. And actually now, once you start to sort of build up a connection, that you really start to favor your own sort of content creators. Now they do a very good job as well of marketing, because they're trying to find, you feel like you've got some relatability to that individual that you're watching a lot. So if they're putting an advert in front of you personally, then you're like, oh, I think I can trust them. You've never met them before, which is a very, very, very interesting concept.
Sorry, I should clarify that it's not even about like paid advertisements in videos. It's more like AdSense revenue from videos.
Yeah, that's what. So I went off onto a bit of a tangent then. But
no, you're right as well.
The money from YouTube, directly from YouTube.
Yeah. No, but you are right as well. I think, like, at the end of the day, is the value you're providing to somebody's life if they're going to sit and watch a 15-minute video of yours, it's got to be providing an immeasurable amount of value in comparison to something of like a 5-second short. This is the nature of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't like. Time is what you're dealing with here. Anyway, so the recommendations for if you wanted to start out on YouTube now, I would say there should be no rush. You're competing with, when you're making, as I said earlier, when you're making a YouTube video, you're competing with anyone who's ever made content before and also is going to make it in the future. So you may as well make a really good video. Or it doesn't even need to be really good, or there should be some element of you sharing your own particular take on the world. Don't try to recreate. Certainly take inspiration from people. That's what we do as humans. We take things, we improve it. But I would say, share yourself, share the things that you care about. And I think just don't do stuff for views. Do stuff that is like, it's hard to say don't do stuff for views, but like the two can go hand in hand. But you should focus on producing something that is valuable in some way. Maybe it has like, there's lots of ways you can provide value in YouTube. You can be entertaining. You can provide information. You can answer people's specific questions. I think like, if there's a question that you're having, usually Google it, you'll find a video on it, but like, why go through those, find something that you can answer better than other people.
Find your niche, I think, is a really good thing.
I think the whole Tim Ferriss thing, that's like, find 3 things that you love and combine them in a weird way to get whatever it is that you're after. I think is a fantastic option.
Yeah, I think you made a really good point earlier on, and you used the word evergreen, and I think that's also really important. Is that you want this to be able to be on the internet for the next 50 years and still be relevant to somebody and still be helpful to somebody.
Yeah.
Don't just do something because it's a current trend, for example.
I should say that like it depends. There is stuff that's like you can capitalize on current topics in terms of things that you might be discussing. Fitness is not one of those things. There is obviously trends within fitness, but like it doesn't make sense. For tech, for example, like it makes sense to be talking about the most current thing within tech because tech changes so quickly. So I think it kind of depends a bit on the person, but focus on something that's going to be evergreen is a good focus to have. It shouldn't be like a short grab. That's what I mean. Like, and you want to do it at an intensity in which you can sustain it for a while. So like, don't just try to make 10 YouTube videos in quick succession, because the likelihood is that all 10 is not going to get any views. But be like, okay, I can make 1 a month for a year and make sure they're really good. And it gives time in between for it to meet with an audience and people to watch it, and you'd get feedback and you'd get better. It's a process.
I've also found that as well with the podcast, is that don't try and do too much. Like I'm doing one a week, which feels like a lot. But there's a tendency to try to be like overcommitting and trying to get too much out there. But be consistent, I think, is probably the key message that I would have actually from my journey so far.
Consistency is massive. I just think you need some breathing space. I find that like just generally in life, you have seasons of growing and doing and growing and doing. It's like, you can learn and then you need to go and apply it. And then you need to go learn from that experience. And if you're just going to bash out a bunch of videos, the likelihood is by the 10th one, you could have done it better.
Yeah. What do you feel about showing your personality online, sort of as opposed to, being real, I guess is what I'm trying to say here.
So I certainly don't feel that I can be like the stereotypical YouTube vlogger, here's my life sort of thing, partly because I just don't give, like, I'm not that interesting. I'm not that special. I'm a normal person. So I've always like, I like doing it, and I, not for any manipulative reason. I find it almost a little bit of a therapeutic as like, talking to camera. I have to think. People write diaries to think, or some people don't think. But I find like if I have to make a YouTube video on a topic, then I'll sit down and consider it for a bit. So making videos, sharing my personality in that sense. But I've always done it with like providing value as a focus. So like I can't just film myself, my life. I've always, so like today I'm making a video on the secret element that gymnasts use in their training. Is something along those lines. Haven't quite decided on the title, but that's essentially it. And it's about a new bit of training that I'm doing. I'm renovating a house at the moment, so I don't have all the time in the world or the energy to do normal training. So it's just like stealing gymnastics methods to make it. But I'm weaving in that something that's valuable as a question to somebody, but presenting it in a way that's like, okay, here's my life at the moment. Here's the circumstance that I'm under. That is like useful context to frame the overall idea.
And how do you balance privacy as well in with this? Because you're now somebody that has your face. You've had 100 million views on
Sure.
YouTube now. Is that something that you have to be quite cautious with? Do you find, or are you quite happy for it to be that way?
I mean, there's always people doing nasty stuff out there, but I get very few like hateful comments. Or dislikes in general. I think again, it like with what I'm doing, I'm highly unlikely to, I guess, to get negative feedback. If I was doing something more controversial, then maybe I would be more concerned about that. If I was a political commentator, maybe I would think a little bit more about my privacy. But yeah, I obviously there's some elements there, but in all honesty, I guess I would always keep my personal details in terms of like where I'm living, car registrations, things like that. Like I am somewhat conscious of it, and usually I do have a delay to when I post as to what I'm doing. So like if I, like for example, I was away and I was posting some things about when I was away, I would usually do it a couple of days after I'm there. But for not really, it's not something I'm concerned about. I think there's overwhelmingly more good people than there are bad people.
Yeah, I do, but unfortunately, we attribute more worry or sort of the headlines are certainly directed towards the very small
like,
minority of people.
As in getting hacked or stuff like that, you mean?
Yeah, no, just in terms of we see bad news, I guess, on the internet more. So, or just
Yeah.
and we're more sort of aware of that. But you mentioned Tim Ferriss earlier on, but he wrote an amazing blog post. It's probably about sort of 6 or 7 years ago now, but talking about sort of fame for him and how it's made him sort of question the privacy side of things, the security side of things,
Sure.
because you're absolutely right that the majority of people out there are good, but people also do like to maintain a level of privacy. I think that Joe Rogan, you couldn't even name like who his family are and that sort of stuff. So he's done a very good job of sort of keeping his family life is very, very private, and then his face is obviously all over the internet for controversial reasons too.
I would say that the scale is massively different. If I was Joe Rogan, I probably would be a bit more concerned, but I'm definitely not Joe Rogan or Tim Ferriss or anything like that. I'm just I'm pretty low key.
but on that note, though, this the name of this podcast is Ambitious Minds. But what are your ambitions? Where do you want to get to? Where do you want to take this? Your journey personally and professionally. Where do you want to get to?
So in all honesty, it's never really changed from when I started. It's always like I want to make the best videos and provide the most value. That's really the reason that it's a very simple goal because it makes judging things very easy. Like, is it better than are the videos better than the times before? Have I spent some time? If maybe I've spent some time working on production side of things. Maybe I need to learn some new stuff so I can have more context to help people. So it's like there's many different aspects to this, but the goal is to always try and be better. I'm way past where I ever thought I would end up. So I think to some extent you need to take some time to smell the roses and be like, I'm just very grateful to be here. I think for myself personally, I at the beginning of COVID, just after I bought my first house and just before COVID, I kind of was like paying a mortgage and paying for everything and making this money from YouTube and coaching. And I was like, oh shit, what if I didn't have this? I've got a family, I've got people who are liable to me. So yeah, I I've renovated 4 properties in the last 4 years. So that's the other thing that I do. More as like I want to be as useful as I can be while I'm here, and I will continue to try and get better. But if people aren't interested to watch me anymore, I'm not going to try and claw onto that. So that was my I had, I guess, a backup plan, but I also enjoy doing it. So yeah, I sort of do that on the side, and I'd love to be able to get to a point, close to getting to a point in which I can create that into another business. But the property renovation game is a different scale to YouTube in terms of YouTube is the Wild West. The internet in general is the Wild West. There's little regulations, things that you need to comply to. You'll have a freedom to kind of do the things you want. So it's been a different, but it's probably a bad answer, really.
I think you've actually said something in there which is really important, because you're sort of speaking about diversifying a lot there.
Yeah,
so,
sure. I mean, I do some stock investing and blah blah blah, boring shit, really.
that's my job.
Sure, yeah. Well,
but we do it. We do it
I
so people
do
don't
dollar
get bored.
or pound cost averaging, dollar cost averaging, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I understand that I am in a privileged position, and I'm trying to make the most of it. But yeah, ultimately is the goal is to always get better. Right now, I'm trying to do a lot of improvements to the app, but this is what I mean. This is kind of what I was trying to say with the don't be in a rush with YouTube stuff, is because the things that I designed and helped create an app with a friend. He did the developing, I did the design of it, and now what I did 5 years ago versus what I can do now is so much, it's improved so much. So I'm currently in the process of re-going over that. And yeah, I mean, I guess ultimately, if you're an entrepreneur, whatever, you never really reach a point where you're like, cool, I'm done. It's just there's a constant level of improvement and refinement, and
always wanting to do more. And I think that I certainly resonate with that.
I would say better rather than more would be my.
But certainly better, yeah, absolutely. I agree with that too. Constant improvement.
Yeah, but I also just I want to do things that I love as well. So I'm very fortunate enough to do the YouTube stuff. I really I enjoy getting my hands dirty and doing house renovations. Anything from clearing up rubble to installing bathrooms. I do it all. I like to.
Yeah. Do you like to learn how to do it as well?
Exactly, man. As I said, I want to know. I want to know exactly. I want to know why we're using this type of steel beam here, what loads it supports, and how. I've done 4 now, and yeah, I've learned so much again from YouTube. I watched so many YouTube videos on how to do everything. I could do basically most things minus plastering.
Talking from experience, there is that.
Yeah.
And I would put myself in the same camp as well. That it feels like a very arrogant thing to say, but it isn't. I do genuinely believe that if I put my mind to it, I can do most things. There are certain jobs that I'm sure I absolutely.
But I think if you're gonna do anything for yourself, you need to have that attitude. It will be naive initially, and me going on YouTube and chatting about fitness, I didn't know anything 9 years ago in comparison to what I know now. I feel pretty confident that I can say that I know a decent amount about fitness. I still got a lot to learn. And with the house stuff, I was like, oh, I'll just give this a go and see what happens. And yeah, again, the only way you can learn is through doing. You can obviously read stuff, but you have to just spend some time experimenting and finding what works and what doesn't work. Yeah. I don't know where I'm going with this, but I completely, you need to have a little bit of blind faith in yourself that you're able to handle any challenges that come up.
Yeah, the naivety in business. But I just want to ask you a quick question there, because you used the word a moment ago. You used the word entrepreneur. Would you describe yourself as an entrepreneur because of the sort of the interest that you've got, and you've created a YouTube channel, you've built an app, you've got clients on your and your training, you're doing property renovation. Is that a word that you would use to describe yourself?
I would like to say yes, but also I'm kind of conscrewed of the fact that I'm presuming you might have heard of the book The E-Myth, right? And he talks in the book about you have these different elements that you need to put together to become an entrepreneur. And I find myself I enjoy doing the practical side to any business. So like if I was being a proper entrepreneur about the property renovation stuff, I'd probably do less myself and focus on how like I can grow that business in different ways. But I enjoy the doing, and it's the same thing with the YouTube. Like you asked me earlier if I edit my own videos, I'm like I edit all of my videos because I enjoy that that task. So I don't know if I am an entrepreneur. I guess in some ways I am, and in other ways I'm not. I arguably could have done a lot better with my business on YouTube. Like if we were looking at like, okay, if the goal of this is to extract as much monetary value as possible, then yeah, I probably could have done a lot better. But that hasn't been my goal. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's not the primary objective. On the journey so far that you've been on, what would you say is the biggest lesson that you've learned so far?
Don't be afraid to ask people for help, because most people will be very glad to do so. Like, yeah, I guess I started out doing fitness stuff, and I would read things to try and understand it myself. But I think, and you asked me earlier, actually, this is a perfect opportunity. So I said earlier that I didn't spend any money on programs, and that was partly because I was like, I can understand how to do it. But ultimately, when you buy a program, when you buy a course, or like I've bought so much further education stuff for fitness, and what you're paying for is somebody to have gone through their time, synthesized things, and put it down into digestible. Like that is invaluable. And there's been many times that have spited me because I've refused to ask somebody for help or guidance to try and figure out myself. Whereas I could have saved myself probably not money, but certainly a lot of time and effort. To ask, and as I said, like people are, like, genuinely want to help. If you ask somebody like, I know you're super knowledgeable about this, would you be able to give me some advice? Like, as long as nobody is going to turn around. Maybe if they're super busy they might do, but like if you word it in a way that you're not trying to get something out of them, and if you genuinely just want to hear their experience and learn from it, and like you're open-minded to that, everyone will be flattered. No matter like what the level they're at, they would take the time to be like, here's what I learned. Because that's ultimately, like, that's what people want. Anyone who's achieved anything is often for recognition, whether they say it or not.
Yeah, that's you are absolutely right that people would usually welcome the opportunity to talk about themselves or the journey they've been on and give other people some advice,
Yeah,
as opposed to just turn you away.
yeah, absolutely. But I think if you're going to approach somebody and ask somebody for advice, you just need to do it in a very conscious way. You need to be like, you don't want to be data mining people. And I think it's, I'd certainly have had that where people have been like, tell me how to do this thing so I can copy it and sell it off to somebody else. And it's like, that's not what I'm here to give you a hand with. Like, I happily help you out and maybe point you in the right direction. It's something that's helped me, but I'm not going to just sit here and do your homework for you.
Is there a person in particular that you've reached out to in the past that you were nervous about beforehand, and they've been invaluable for you? Maybe the advice they've given.
I would say Emmett. Emmett Lewis. If you don't know, he teaches flexibility stuff. He's been doing this for years and years and years. And I guess like I didn't really realize initially. I paid him for coaching, but I've learned so much from him over the years. So I don't know if I wasn't necessarily nervous about that. That was when I realized this was useful. I'm trying to think about other times. I think most of the people I've learned from I've become friends with, and that's like my videographer. I say my videographer, he's just my mate. He does some videography for me, but we chat about like YouTube sort of stuff all the time, and like there's no video that I put out that I won't send to him, and some people might be annoyed with him because he'd always give you his opinion on something. But that's why, like, I love him, because I can send him something, and I know he's not going to look at it and be like, "Yeah, it's pretty good." Like, he will rinse it, as
it's proper feedback.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, that is, I show my girlfriend, and she's obviously super supportive, but she'll be like, "Yeah, it's really, really nice. Like, I like the colors here, and I like this sort of thing." But Tim will be like, "No, this is shit. This is shit. This is shit." And that's like, yeah. So I guess it's being open and you'd be surprised like how many people are interested. If you but that's the thing. That's what I mean. Most of them are friends. So if you approach it like as I'm not trying to get something out of you,
Yeah.
like maybe I can provide value to you. Um, that's I think most people have ended up being friends that I've learned a lot from.
I think also what you find is that you, as opposed to start asking for advice, you start to brainstorm ideas. So you are both getting something out of it because you're making them think about things from a different perspective, for example, because it's not usually just, I've got a question, can you give me the answer and walk away?
Yeah, exactly. It's not that. It's not. And some you might have to pay for it, and that's I think you either value that or you don't. Um, but I think as well that back and forth is super important, especially if you work for yourself, and
Mm.
it's maybe just one of you or the two of you. If you don't have any back and forth, it's very hard to iterate and improve. So yeah, like finding somebody that has goes both ways, who you can bounce ideas off.
Yeah, you said there about working for yourself. How do you like? There'll be people out there who say, working for yourself, amazing work life balance. You can do what you want when you want, but can it also be quite lonely at the same time?
Yeah, I guess so, but that's what I've got. I've got my dog.
Oh, cute.
um, yeah, I guess so. I think there was probably a point, maybe a year into working for myself when I finished, and I was like, kind of just feeling a bit down, and I was like, why do I feel kind of depressed? Like YouTube's going really well. I'm like doing much better than I expected with coaching, and I was like, I realized I just wasn't making any time to like socialize or do stuff outside of that. And that's the one thing that like it's kind of in bit you depending on what the business is that you do, but certainly if you run an online business, you are somewhat isolated from the community around you, because I'm not dependent on them. Like my community is worldwide,
Mm.
which is is a blessing and a curse. So I do make a conscious effort to try to connect with people, both in terms of people who are interested in the same things as me, who I've met so many friends online, and I'm a big fan of making virtual friends into real life friends and meeting up with people and training with them, and making a conscious effort to do that, because again, like I always come away from those meetings one feeling like I'm like, oh, I've got to hang out with a friend for a bit, but I also like will learn something from them. So yeah, just like making a conscious effort to be sociable, because it's not a given. If you work in a company, you're interacting with people all day, and
Yeah, you turn up to work on a Monday and talk about your weekend, whereas you wake up on a Monday and say, what am I doing today, or
yeah,
there's the
exactly.
gym.
So yeah, just I there was a point in which I was like a little bit down and depressed despite things going well, and that was the biggest thing of it. So I make a conscious effort to try and have like a social network around me of both professional and personal friends. But I think as well, like sometimes with guys, this is a bit of a problem anyway. We're not usually the best people at keeping in contact or socializing or
Yeah,
making things
sadly.
happen. Like so, I try to as much as possible make that conscious effort. But I'm not the sort of person who needs loads of social interaction anyway. I've always been a bit of a maverick. I'm just playing, but yeah, I like to I do my own thing.
Yeah, I'm certainly an introvert, which is quite weird because I now do a podcast where I'm speaking to people. But I think that
Sure.
it's because it's a sort of one-on-one conversation that I find really enjoyable. But certainly, I can lock myself away in a room or in a coffee shop or whatever, and read a book or listen to a
Yeah.
podcast, and that really keeps me satisfied. Which is not for everybody, but equally though, I do have the a core group of people around me that I use for my socializing. But I think resonating with what you said there, I've got a core group of people around me that I am very good friends with, rely on for advice. We brainstorm ideas, etc., etc. As opposed to sort of, I'm not the person that now goes out clubbing to socialize. Those days are long gone, and I realize now that I didn't find it enjoyable when I was doing it with other people.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I guess it is somewhat of a daunting task to hear, like, oh, you've got a group around you that you can bounce ideas off and things like that. If you're just starting out a business, um, and like I guess you have less credibility or less skin in the game to kind of go and make those connections. it is challenging reaching out, but that's like kind of where that patience and consistency comes in. Like maybe when you're starting out a business, like it's unlikely that you're going to be able to reach out to somebody who owns a massive company and get some advice and guidance, but like you don't necessarily need that as well. It's almost like you want the advice from somebody who is just a little bit ahead of you.
Mm.
And if you can surround yourself by people who are like, in whatever way it is, if they're slightly ahead of you, maybe not in all aspects, but they have that aspect, it'll just raise your game.
Yeah,
So
I think I'm a firm believer in you are the average of the five
yeah,
people closest to you, etc.
yeah,
And making sure those people around you are important. And like you say, for you, who you're on your own journey here, so making sure that you've got good people you can speak to, can help you on that journey, but also that you're friends with, which is most important. They're not mentors.
yeah. I mean, if you have to pay for it, you have to pay for it. It's not a friendly thing. That's fine. It is what it is. Like, I guess that's even like I'm friends with a lot of trades from renovating houses, and although yes, I pay for their services, but like I've always tried to treat them like friends, and many of them are friends now that I chat to outside of that. So I think sometimes we can be a bit too transactional with our approach to like how can I extract value out of this for myself, whatever the like social circumstances. Whereas yeah, it's just like YouTube, you have to provide value as well, and sometimes you have to play a long game, you know.
Yeah, definitely. In all of these podcasts that I'm doing so far, I've got a couple of sort of like, I guess, like quite quick fire questions. But
Okay.
can I just so a couple of questions for you? One of them is actually going to be more fitness related, and one of them is going to be sort of just more general. But I'll start with the first one, which is, are there three things that you do now that you wish you'd have known 10 years ago?
Oh, good question. 10 years ago, probably from a fitness perspective, one of the biggest things would be like there's no rush because you're going to be in a body until you die, and for some reason there's always this like rush with fitness, achieve this in 30 days, XYZ. Like, yeah, you can achieve it in 30 days, but you still have to do the work to maintain it. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. It's like there's no rush, just put your head down, do the work. I think don't be afraid to ask people for help. But asking for help isn't a sign of weakness, etc., etc. And 10 years ago, I can't think of a third thing. I feel like it would have to be longer than 10 years ago that I was not doing the things that have helped me now.
Yeah, let's go back. Let's go
Yeah,
back
sorry.
even further.
It would be something, I guess, relatively cliche in terms of like not caring about what people think. But I'm trying to think of a way to word it that's not just because it's just like when you're a kid at school, you do stuff to try and fit in. I just think when you become an adult, you realize that, and more so when you become an adult, when you're working for yourself, you realize that dynamics of school really mean shit. Like you still have some dynamics of school when you're in a company, in a business, like that kind of, you've all got to be there, and yes, you've got some elements of there's always like, but you don't have that bullshit when you're running your own business. You just do stuff that matters. So yeah, I don't know, something along the lines of like, just be yourself, but more so in the respect of like when you go out into the world, people don't really care what it is that you do. They just like care that you're competent, I guess.
Yeah. Also, sort of embrace your uniqueness.
Yeah, of
Because
course.
that's something that, particularly in this day and age now, social media is certainly one thing that fuels this. But people want to fit in, but not just fit in with the people around them, but fit in with these sort of like stereotypes they see online, which is very difficult to do, often unachievable.
Yeah, I'd almost say that like the internet's kind of broken that to some extent. Like you do have that social pressure, but also like there is now a niche for niches. There's a niche of a niche of a niche. There's the internet has provided access to the entire world, and you can find there's plenty of other weirdos like yourself that care about like I don't know, the very smallest of things. So I love that, like find your group and interact with people. That's yeah, that kind of goes back to the whole mentorship as well. Like just the amount of people who are like in comment sections, either trying to get something out of you or like try to, or I don't know, promote their services, whatever it is. Like if you try to interact genuinely with someone online, you will get the same thing back. So yeah, like that was, find your niche, find your people.
Yeah, find your people.
Yeah,
But you said something. Your first answer was about not rushing, and I guess
yeah,
the key thing there is actually about longevity, and certainly one thing that I've realised since starting my own mobility journey is one question that I posed to myself quite early on, and I saw that my granddad is almost 80, and he's certainly a lot less mobile than he used to, obviously. But
sure.
my nan isn't, for example. She's still
Hmm.
so active and so fit, and we've got grandchildren. They've got great grandchildren in the family now, and I sort of made a commitment to myself that I want to be able to pick them up when I'm that age. I want to be able to play with them, and I want to make sure that I'm in good physical condition for as long as possible, because
Yeah,
your mind is going to be active until you die, hopefully at least until you die, but you don't want your body to let you down.
yeah.
And particularly, we are going to live longer, so make sure that you look after yourself for as long as possible.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. Yeah, I think uh, I would challenge the are we going to live longer, because I think actually my generation might be the first generation to not live as long as its previous one.
Interesting.
Um,
Why do you think that?
no, I think that's what the stats say.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, and I do think there's an element of like the world is a is got more against, our comfort of living has gone more against like the requirement to, you have to get out of your way to be healthy, I guess, these days. So,
Yeah.
but I do think absolutely like it's quality of life, not duration. I think up until certainly late 60s, I believe there's an element of decline after that point in which like, you're naturally going to get worse, but such as aging, you can certainly improve that massively by just, I'm very interested to see. I think the generation before myself didn't really do physical fitness, although they had like a lot of other good aspects to their lifestyle. I'm interested to see like how my age group ages, and whether there is like how it turns out basically.
Yeah, I was actually having this conversation with my girlfriend recently, and we were talking about, we look at our parents, and our parents don't exercise. They
Yeah,
probably they've got more sedentary lifestyles. They probably eat and drink too much, and we seem to all now at this age, the gym is much more accessible. Everyone wants to be able to be fit and healthy. You see, these archetypes online of people, the fitness influencers and stuff. Now, I'm very keen as well to see how that plays out in the long run. Are
yeah.
we? Is it all going to fade off once we've passed 35 and it doesn't matter anymore, or is this going to be something that we maintain and it's sustainable for the longer term?
Well, I think the consistency piece is huge, but yeah, I think ultimately, in theory, we should see an improvement, right? I do think there is like something to be said for the stuff that we don't have control over, in the sense that we have a much more toxic world with sort of microplastics, different endocrine disruptors, artificial light, all of these other sort of things that are coming into play that maybe wasn't a challenge for previous generations.
Mm.
But again, I think overall the odds are stacked in your favor if you make the most of it.
Yeah, and actually, so I think it feeds into the next question I've got is: are there three sort of biggest bang for your buck pieces of fitness advice that you would give to people that are listening?
Get outside as much as possible. Your mind and body will be better for it. Whether that's just walking, whether that's going for a run. I train personally outside pretty much all the time. I'd literally just keep some rings and some other bits and pieces in the back of the car, and I can have a gym wherever I am. So, yeah, get outside as much as possible is absolutely essential. Do some form of resistance training. I think that's probably the generation above what they miss out. A lot of people will do like cycling or running or something like that, but resistance training is huge. Maintaining bone density, maintaining muscle mass, maintaining grip strength, three big predictors of how well you're going to age. So I would say, yeah, couple of times a week, do some form of resistance training, or you could do something every day. Doesn't really matter. And yeah, fitness wise, try to do it with people.
That's a good one.
Social community side of things, again, massive predictors of, I can't remember what the stat is about like people who live alone die so much younger, but there is definitely something out there that's like, it's quite a considerable number. I'd have to like fact check myself on that one, but yeah, just from that perspective of like social connection, it's huge. And if you do stuff with friends, at the end of the day, you're more likely to continue to do it.
Yeah. Also make it fun.
Yeah, it makes it fun, sure.
If you you want to reduce the hurdles to actually doing it in the first place. So
Yeah.
if you're going to the gym and you say, I want to go after work, and then you're tired, you're less likely to do it. Whereas if you say, you know, I'm going to play football tonight, or I'm going to do a sport tonight, and that's something that you say, oh, I'm really looking forward to going and playing tennis or paddle or whatever you want to do tonight.
It ticks so many boxes, man. It's like amazing. It doesn't need to just be the gym. I completely agree. I would just add that I don't think it always needs to be fun. I just think, like, because you know, sometimes you need to do stuff that's hard.
No, of course.
But it should be like, you know, a good challenge, rewarding is kind of the vibe that we're going for. Maybe some fun in there as well for good measure.
Yeah. Just to pick up on your point about the longevity, I saw a study where apparently if you have a dog, then those people have the longest life expectancy. So I've got a puppy now actually as well. So we're both sort of doing well on that front. But
I always maintain to my parents, like you could ask my parents, like whenever I was a kid, I said to them, I was like, with my first paycheck, I was going to buy a dog, like my first. I had it, you know, and I never actually had a first paycheck, so I've always worked for myself.
Maybe you can give me a piece of advice, because I'm in the puppy phase right now, and how old is Mickey? His name is he's 4 months old. So,
but Molly, she's 3.
Molly is so well behaved, so I can see how you probably get a lot more done than I can. But what would be your advice for how do you sort of maintain being productive whilst also having a dog that can just completely disrupt your day at any moment?
Yeah, this is true. I think dogs like boundaries, and as humans, we like to feel like we're being kind, but they much prefer to know like what's the deal and what's going on. So yeah, like if I'm doing work, she knows that I might give her a chew or something to keep her busy, but like she knows that I'm not going to pay her attention, and then she shouldn't feel bad about that. And then when I give her, like when I'm fussing her, I'm fussing her. When I'm not. So yeah, like try to set boundaries, and also like try to make positive experiences of like a cage or a crate. So she loves going in the cage, and from like a puppy, we made sure that it was like a real positive, like it was her safe space. And I think if you can do that, it's really good for one, traveling, but also like if you're leaving them, or if you know they're being annoying, to put them in the cage and give them something to keep them busy.
That's actually an interesting point. So we're now getting onto a bit of advice about having a dog, but
I don't know too much. But yeah, I just think most of the time if you have a badly behaved dog, it's because you're trying to be too nice to it, and you need to tell him who's boss and what the deal is.
Certainly, I think at the moment my dog he knows he's boss.
Yeah, it's just like toddlers and kids. Like toddlers and kids will always test the boundaries that, you know, they keep pushing things to the edge until they find the edge, and then they know what they can, like how to act. That's how we teach kids how to grow up in society. Like if you give them no rules, then you know, chaos ensues.
Yeah, but look, Tom, honestly, I thank you so much for taking the time to come on today. And I know that we've been trying to make this work for a little while now. So yeah,
that's mostly my fault then, I think. But.
No, but I really appreciate you coming on, because you know you've got a lot of stuff going on right now, and I learned that over the last few weeks. But yeah, like I said, you've been very valuable, and I'm looking forward to sharing this podcast with listeners. And I'll also finish off as well by saying, thank you for your influence on me, because when I first we were in lockdown and sort of not really moving around too much, and I started to get aches and pains, etc. And I started just looking on YouTube about doing some yoga and stuff like that, and you came up, and awesome. And it's been something that I've been consistent with over the last 4 years now. It is, because it would have been about July in 2020. So
Yeah, isn't that
you know,
wild?
yeah, and yeah, and I've now been on I've been on yoga retreats in Thailand
Sick.
twice. So and that has also been something that has sort of opened the door to completely new interest that I never had before. I would never
Love
have
it.
described myself beforehand as anybody that would have sort of been not a yogi, but like a person who does yoga. But yeah, I'm grateful to you for inspiring me to do that and coming across your videos. So yeah, I just want to say
I'm
thanks.
very happy to help. That's why I do this. So yeah, love to hear it. Thank you for letting me know.
Yeah, well, and like I said again, thanks for taking the time to come on today. So it's been a
Yeah,
pleasure.
pleasure. Best of luck with everything. And if people are still listening and it was a coherent podcast, then well done to your editor.
I really appreciate it, man. Cheers.
That's all right. Pleasure.